Welcome to She Moves Bravely, a podcast dedicated to empowering women through stories of resilience, courage, and success. I'm your host, Shantae Dent. Today, I have the honor of introducing you to a woman who moves bravely. Her name is Melanie Gareau. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's an honor for me.
I commend you. I know that our listeners are going to be moved on many levels as they hear your journey unfold. You're going to hear from a woman who has moved bravely in an area that is heartbreaking. But what we'll find is Melanie has transitioned, transformed into doing something that I know will continue to help others. Melanie, let's go ahead and dive into your story and what you have overcome.
Okay, sounds good. So I will start by rewinding way back to 2015. So I'm a French Canadian prairies girl. I live in Saskatchewan, and I live on an acreage very close to a small town. And when I say small town, I mean very, very small town. If you blink while you're driving through it, you will miss it. But in that small town, we have a small school, and I worked there. I was a teacher in 2015 when the story kind of takes root. So one day in March, it's funny that we're approaching March. We're almost in March. In March of 2015, I went into work early. I always like to go about an hour before students started arriving off of the bus. And I walked into my classroom. I went to my computer. I opened it up, and I started my, my planning for the day. And I noticed one of my students pull up in front of my window in his car that morning, and I thought that was very strange because he didn't, it wasn't usual for him to show up at school that early. But I sort of dismissed it because his mom worked in the school. She was the custodian, and I thought maybe he was there to help her with something. So I turned my back from the window and went back to my work. And a couple minutes later, I heard what sounded like a snowball being thrown at my window. So I looked, didn't see anything besides the little red car, and went back to my work. And then someone walked in a few seconds later and said that my student had taken his life just outside of my classroom window. The rest of the day felt like what you see in a movie. Things slowed right down, but also felt like they were going in fast motion. I was there when this mother found out that something had happened to her son. We had the buses, show up because we don't. I'm in my small town. We don't have, our first responders. We don't have, the policemen and everything. We had to wait for them to come in from the nearest town, and that took some time. So the buses started arriving. So it was a lot of managing that and trying to be strong for the students who were arriving, trying to hide, certain details from them. And it was really a big whirlwind. And the next day, I walked back into my workplace and continued as though, nothing had happened. The day after, the week after, it was kind of, I almost felt like I was on autopilot, trying to forget what had happened, trying to be very strong for these students who every one of them changed that day. Every one of those students changed that day. And the look in their eyes changed that day. And everything for us changed that day. And my way of dealing with it was to ignore it. So for a long time, I tried not to think about what happened that day. And it worked. for a while, I was able to go back to work and continue my job as though nothing had happened. I started to become hyper aware of how my other students were feeling, how all my students were feeling. I was noticing, trying to really take notice on what they were telling me and what they weren't telling me, what their body language was telling me. And if a student hesitated when they told me, if I'd asked them how was it going today, and they hesitated before saying, oh, it's good, I would, you know, I'd stop them and say, hey, like, how is it going really? Like, you can tell me. And students talked. I worked with teenagers mostly. This was a kindergarten to grade 12 school, but my students were the high school kids, and they struggled, and not just because of the suicide and that trauma, but a lot of other things. These, teenagers go through a lot of really hard things.
Mhm.
So that's how I dealt with it for a few years. Uh, Unfortunately, about 3 years later, another one of my former students died by suicide.
Mhm.
And when that happened, I I was I was forced to deal with it. I was forced to face all those emotions that I had ignored for so long. Uh, that was really hard. It was almost like I was back on that day, and I'm having to face all those emotions I ignored. So I decided that I wasn't going to ignore it this time, and I was going to work through it. My first instinct was not, unfortunately, not to do therapy, because that would have been really smart. Counseling, therapy, that kind of thing would have been a really wise thing to do, but I didn't. I decided to take out my journal and write every morning. So I would set my alarm very early in the morning. I would wake up, I took my journal, I would write. I was writing. I just wrote everything I was grateful for, and um, everything I envisioned for my life. I wasn't journaling about the suicide, but I was trying to get grounded. I was trying to ground myself before having to step into my workplace and do life, do life. So that worked. I felt great. It did make me feel a lot more grounded and like I was more in control of what was happening. And a few months later, I decided, instead of taking out my journal, I would take out my laptop and write. And I was not writing a book. That was not my plan at first. I was writing to my students, not to my students. I was writing things in this document about things that my students were struggling with. And it was really a big mess of thoughts and ideas and stories and takeaways and lessons and everything. There were no chapters at first. It was just really something written on a computer instead of in a journal. Uh, and after an entire year, I had close to 60,000 words. And that's when that whisper started. I started hearing that whisper about how I had a book. This was a book. This was big enough to be a book. This was important enough to be a book. So I decided to publish, and my book was published in August of 2023. So just a few months ago. A lot of things have happened since then that I find absolutely fascinating. And I talked about it a little bit before we started recording. The messages I got after having this book out on bookshelves, because it is available worldwide on Amazon. I was getting messages from mothers, because I think, well, as parents, I think all parents want what's best for their child. I have never I've never met a parent in all my years of teaching, and I did principalship for a few years. And in all those years, I have not met a parent who did not want their child to be successful. I think every parent wants the best for their child, but some are just less equipped. They have less less in their toolbox to help their kid. And that's, that's just the way it is. And I think this book provides tools for its readers, whether they are, parents or teenagers or, maybe educators. It provides tools for them because we don't all, become an adult with a toolbox full of all the things we need to succeed in life. I was lucky enough as a teenager to have been given a lot of tools that I took for granted up until now. I keep thinking about it. When I was 15 years old, my mom told us that we were watching The Secret. I don't know if you're familiar with The Secret, the law of attraction. We watched this show and it literally changed my life because it became my way of living and my way of thinking. And it was such a big tool for me that I've put into practice since. Like I've created this amazing life because I knew that I had all this control over what my life looked like. And I've gained a lot of tools throughout the years, and but my hope is that this book offers some tools so that hard things are a little less hard for the people going through them.
I believe it will. Your book, Why Me? What Now? Life's Tough, but You're Tougher. The title alone speaks volume. And what better person to write the book, someone with a different perspective. And it is tragic when we hear of the individuals who are no longer with us, the pressures of life and various experiences, and there's death by suicide. That's heartbreaking, troublesome. And for you to witness 2 times, to have that experience with students of yours, we don't hear much from the teacher's perspective. Clearly, it's understandably so. The parents who are interviewed and they're sharing, the lovely aspects of their children and things of that nature. We don't often hear the perspective of the teacher, of the educator. And your initial way of coping, you initially decided, I'm going to suppress, and perhaps that will help me press on by not thinking about it. And then you quickly realized that wasn't working out so well.
No.
But you also position yourself to be an anchor for your students, being able to identify when they were trying to kind of speed through it or speed past it. Oh, I'm fine, I'm okay. And then, go about their day. But I love that you were there to kind of slow them down and give them to permission to grieve, permission to process this pain. What can readers find in your book? You mentioned the moms, and that was the first thing I did think about is, this is beneficial to parents, that it'll speak volume to something they might be struggling with. And in return, share this with their children, with their daughters, with their sons, without spoiling, of course, the details. What can you extract from your book? What can readers expect?
Okay, great question. When I decided it was going to become a book that other people were going to read, I also decided I did not want it to be a book telling people how to be. And I didn't want it to seem like I was preaching or that I was telling them, what the right thing is and what the wrong thing is. There are a lot of really, really great books for teenagers out there if that's what you're looking for. What I wanted, and this is what I hope I've created, is a book that a teenager can take and flip to whatever chapter they want and read a story. So every chapter starts with a story that they can relate to. So if the chapter is about struggling with body image, they will read a story about someone, struggling with their body image. If it's about relationship with their parents or with friends or sexuality or depression, they will start by reading a story that hopefully they can relate to. In the second part of every chapter, I talk about my own journey. A lot of the stories are my own, um, because I have personally gone through a lot of those things. And if I haven't, then I tell the story of, someone else who has lived through a similar struggle. And what I want readers to realize as they're reading is how much control they have over the situation. Their reaction is fully in their control. Their thoughts are in their control. And sometimes I think teenagers have a hard time with that because uh, they're at the age where they're trying to gain independence and pull away from their parents and not need them as much,
Mhm.
but they also need so much guidance because they have a lot of stuff to learn,
Right.
and they have their own. I mean, teenagehood is
Oh,
hard.
it is.
It's a tough thing, and fitting in is difficult, and you don't know where you fit, and you
Mhm.
have your own goals, your own dreams, but yet you're trying to please everyone else. You're being told by your teacher how to be, and what to do, what not to do, and you're being told by your parent what to do, what not to do, and it's just such a big struggle. And I hope as they read this, they feel like, okay, it's going to be okay, and I can get through this hard thing. It is not forever. It is a season. That's something, actually, I'm preparing this talk for the month of March for International Women's Day,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to, because it is for women, it is not for teenagers, this event. So I'm trying to take what I can from the book and uh, you know, kind of translate it into something that is applicable to an older audience. And I'm reflecting a lot on my own upbringing. And this was something that at the time when I was a teenager and I'd come home and I would talk to my mom about the things that were hard, I'd come home and say, my friend who I thought was my friend didn't treat me very nicely today. And my mom never she never focused on the negative. We never stayed there. She always, I don't know if she did it intentionally, but she always made me realize that this was temporary. There was yes, you had a hard day. Yes, you might be having a hard week. Maybe this is a hard year, but it is not forever. Like tomorrow could be completely different. And it was such a small thing, but it's so powerful, because when you're in that valley, that dark place, the bottom of the mountain, and you feel like you can't see the sun, you can't see past this challenge. Sometimes you think you're going to stay there forever, and that is a very sad place to be, but it's not forever. So that's what I hope readers gain from the book, is that they do have control, and they can. I even say in my prologue that I hope my readers read the book and question certain things. It is not meant to be taken, uh, you know, as a Bible. Like, I hope they challenge it and they discuss, some of the ideas with their parents, or with their families, with their guardians, if they don't, if they have guardians. Like, I hope it makes them question their own beliefs about certain things. And yeah.
Sometimes the parent, depending on their upbringing, depending on where they are in their personal development journey, as you mentioned earlier, all the parents you've come in contact with, they want nothing but for their child to succeed. Along
Mhm.
with that desire, I imagine there are some parents who don't feel 100% equipped to help their child succeed. That might not have been what they experienced, and perhaps they've never taken the time to learn, how do I support my child? There's the gap between the parent or the guardian and the child and the teen. And then your book, or the contents of your book, can serve as a bridge, able to bridge that gap. And then
Mhm.
as you equip the moms, there'll be a better position to support their children. And
Mhm.
I just I appreciate your approach to the book, and even the transparency of saying, hey, it's not the Bible. You know, I'm not coming and telling you do like this is the way. There are going to be other ideas and suggestions and opinions, and clearly there might be areas where there's a chapter where someone will embrace 100% wholeheartedly, another area where maybe not so much. It depends, because you definitely cover multiple subjects. What I
Mhm.
appreciate is you are spearheading the conversation. A lot of
Mhm.
times we see it, we know we need to talk about it, but people are afraid to address the
Mhm.
subjects. Or here's another, you're a mom, you know, your kids come home, how was your day? Good. That's
Mm,
I need details, please. So
yeah.
sometimes it's helpful for someone to provide specific questions. And I like to encourage individuals to stay curious. If you're reading the book, you're reading Melanie's book, and there's a subject matter that you think your child is dealing with, you're pre-screening the book, you know, I think my child might be struggling in this area, but you don't know how to approach it. Well, maybe there's
Mhm.
some content in the book that will help you as a parent, you know, initiate the conversation by asking a specific question and inviting your teen to respond. But I do see the book as serving as a tool in multiple areas where, yes,
Mhm.
directly supporting teens and all the things, right, that teenagers
Mhm.
experience, but also a tool for parents who desire to support their children, but they're not sure where they should start.
I love what you said about parents not so I have not met a parent who did not wish absolute success for their children, but I've also never met a parent who felt 100% equipped to
Mm,
help them. I think we are all doing our best, and
mm,
we enter parenthood with our toolkit, if you want to call it that.
mm,
That was, that all the things we've gained throughout our childhood and as a teenager and young adult, like we take that with us. We are not done growing, and we grow as parents.
yeah.
I grow with my oldest, and I'm learning things with my second, and I'm still learning things with my youngest, who is now 10. I am constantly learning. And I I met a parent. I was with a friend a couple weeks ago, and her children are out of school. They are they were just entering adulthood, and she made a comment about how she felt like she failed as a parent, and it made me so sad for her that that's what she thinks. But I want her to know, and I we were in a conference. I didn't really have a lot of time to discuss with her, but she gave everything that she had to those kids, because I think that's what parents do. We give what we have to give, and we're not done parenting. Yes, your youngest might be 18, 19, 20 years old, but we're not done. Like, there's still lots they can learn from us, and we're still learning and growing, and they will continue to gain
Mm.
tools for their toolkit as they continue to grow older. And so I don't think we ever feel like we've nailed parenting.
Along that note, Melanie, I would love for you to share any advice that you have for a listener who's struggling right now. Perhaps they were that teacher, that educator who had a student die by suicide, a parent whose child died by suicide. Um, there's someone out there going through a hard season.
Mhm.
What would you say to that individual?
Yeah, great question. There's so much I want to tell this person, because I've been there. I have been in that dark season that feels like it lasts forever and there's no way out. I have been there. And the reason I titled the book "Why Me, What Now" is because the "why me" is often our first reaction. When something tragic happens, when we're going through a hard thing, divorce or death, the loss of someone we love, or our child is struggling, or any struggle, we our first reaction is to be like, oh, this really sucks, and why is this happening to me? But there's also a I I say this with as much compassion as I can, but there is a lesson somewhere in there, in that hard thing. There is growth that has to happen, and it's really hard to see that, and maybe we'll never see it, but we can look at it differently. We can look at this challenge differently, and we can convince ourselves of anything. So you can convince yourself that this is where you're going to be forever, and this is how life is supposed to be, and it's going to be hard. Or you can convince yourself that there is a light at the end of this, and that's where you're headed, and you have what it takes to get there. Whatever you believe is what you're going to manifest. So I choose for my own life to look at it in a positive way, and I think we can all learn to do that. That's definitely something that is a practice. uh, if someone is going through something hard, my biggest thing is the fact that it is temporary. um, you will get through this. Sometimes we need help, and I can't stress that enough, especially having lost not just the two young gentlemen that I mentioned to suicide, but there have been other suicides, unfortunately, in my community. And those people did not reach out. They suicide is definitely very complex, and uh, I don't want to. It's not a choice the way we think it's a choice. Like it was obviously something very, very hard that we have a hard time understanding. But I want people to know that they can lean on people, and we are meant to lean on people sometimes.
Yeah.
So if you're in that dark place, reach out, and it might not be the first person you talk to who will be able to help you. Your best friend might not be equipped to help you. She might not have the capacity to help you. Reach out to someone else. Go find that person who has the capacity to walk you through this hard thing. Because there is someone out there. There is someone, whether it's a professional. I have done therapy in the last couple of years, and it has been uh, very interesting. I've made a lot of discoveries, and I have to say, therapy, like I have walked myself through therapy. I feel like I've done my own therapy through my therapy sessions. I've discovered so many things about myself. I think it is so important uh, to seek professional help if you need it, but definitely lean on the people you love if you can. If you're going through this hard thing, we're not meant to do things alone.
Yeah.
So sorry, that's a very long answer.
And important. I hope everyone is taking these words to heart. If you are in a season and you find that it's difficult navigating through this process and this journey of recovery, don't go at it alone. Reach out to someone, find someone who can be in your corner, who will hold it down with you when you are in the deep, dark trenches. And I like that you said, Melanie, it might not be that first person that you reach out to. It might not even be your best friend. And if you don't receive the response you desire from that first person or from the best friend, it's tough to say, but please try not to take it personal, and realize perhaps that person is not equipped to support you at this time, and find someone else who can, someone again who can stand with you in your inner circle, side by side, to help you and support you along the way. So important to know that you're not meant to go at life alone.
Yeah.
Well, it has been a pleasure connecting with you today, Melanie, and I thank you for your openness. Thank you for writing the book and journaling. You know, I think it always starts with journaling. That's how my journey began. I've been journaling for years, and you never know what can come from that. But journaling it is also another healthy first step. If verbalizing it to another person feels overwhelming for you all, Start with journaling, start with writing down your thoughts, whatever those thoughts are. No filter necessary. Just be transparent and vulnerable with yourself and that piece of paper and the pen. Journal.
Yes. Yeah.
Melanie, how can individuals get in touch with you, purchase your book?
So the book is available on Amazon worldwide. It's called Why Me, What Now? I also, if someone really would love a signed copy, it would be my pleasure to mail it to them. And that is available through my website, which is just my first and last name .ca. So MelanieGareau.ca. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as melg.author. And I would be happy to answer questions and receive feedback and all the things on my social media platforms.
We will make sure individuals can connect with you by including your contact information in our show notes. Melanie, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your courage. And in more ways than one, speaking up and speaking out for the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.